Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
I thought Gaby was going to be introducing us. We are here for episode 82 of The Inner Lenses. This one is coming to you hot on the 20th of January. It's also Squirrel Appreciation
No,
Day.
that's tomorrow, the 21st.
Oh, okay. Well, here's your early warning. Get ready. Form a strategy right now about how you're going to hold yourself accountable for appreciating the squirrels in your life. Because that's what we've talked about so far. And in this episode, we're going to move forward to something that Gaby mentioned towards the end of our last conversation about how accountability is modeled for us, or the lack thereof. Because, as with a lot of things we've talked about in the inner lenses, this stuff isn't taught in schools. So, where was accountability modeled for you? What were the lessons that you learned that have not served you, perhaps? And also, maybe ones that have served you. But given our last conversation, I think we all probably have picked up on accountability as we've gone along, rather than had it modeled for us in a sort of characterful and mature way.
Mm. The reason why I came up with the last question, now, first of all, the reason why I forgot to introduce the session, or it was supposed to be my turn, was the Squirrel Appreciation Day threw me. That was just so funny. But the reason why I came up with this is we talked about accountability in the last episode, and we came to the conclusion it's a good thing if it's a check-in, if we have somebody we want to be our accountability partner, in other words, a person we trust. They can just ask us certain questions to make sure we can go forward in life and all this. So, dear listener, listen to the last episode. It brings you nicely into this one. Now, the question for me came up in the end is, yes, this is all fine and good, but how do we really experience accountability in the big world? Because out there in work, when we have managers, when we have bosses, accountability has a completely different tone to it and a different agenda, because the bosses come with an agenda. They usually do not hold you accountable for your own good or for your personal growth. They hold you accountable what their agenda is, the goal of the company. It has really not much usually to do with you. One giveaway is that I do the reviews in the end of the year and then bring something up in December, which happened in February, which is completely ridiculous in the first place. There should be a continuous, and I really use the word should by purpose here, there should be a continuous back and forward between the managers and the staff, and they're talking about where we're at, where we're going, what's happening, what's important for the company. Because, of course, when we work for a company, they have to reach a certain outcome to make sure the company stays afloat. Not everybody can just do what they want, right? That makes sense. But there's no communication. And then they have this thing in the end where they hold people accountable and do this review thing in December and combine 12 months into that, which is not helpful. That's why staff hate the reviews. That's why staff threaten them, because it's not productive, and it's certainly not beneficial for anyone, right? So how can we actually bring what we talked about in the last episode about having a proper check-in and a communication, helping people forward, into companies, combining that with the goals of the company? Because that's what's lacking. I never experienced that in any company.
I think that's a cultural thing for organizations, and would probably take a little bit of a shift in outlook. But certainly in terms of reviews, I don't think you should ever get to an annual review with surprise or anxiety. If there are things to be addressed, they are best addressed as one goes along. And in in terms of culture, I think, bringing the spirit of who you are to the spirit of what you do, quite an Oriental thing. I know the Japanese are quite possibly bends the individual more to the company than the other way around. But it kind of opens the door to the conversation about, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, are you really in the right place? Because, being accountable for an organization's, achievements over a year, let's face it, if you really don't give a shit about that job or how you're performing the job, we talked the other day about the benefits of having a 3 or a 4 day week, and how it's better for staff morale and stuff. I think in that circumstance, you're probably much more likely to get staff who are holding themselves accountable to the goals and the vision of a company or an organization, than people who are just forced to be at their desks 8-10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and probably are looking for ways that they can have a little bit more time at the water cooler or on a slow walk between rooms or something. We're all looking at Erika because she's the only one that actually works in an environment like that.
Well, Brett's got his own. Brett is a different environment, but accountability or lack thereof, I think you find it everywhere. It's definitely a systemic problem and it's a culture shift. But again, I'm going to rewind a little bit to how we started here. We're not taught. It's definitely not taught in schools. It's like a quiet, it's an unspoken thing, right? I think in schools and even at home, is the earliest learning of being accountable, because you have the culture of the family is that you cannot be held accountable if there are expectations, right, that are laid out for you. Like, you don't put your elbows on the table. You don't, you come in when you're supposed to, whatever it is that you've grown up with. And you sort of learn it indirectly, and you learn, if I do this, something's going to happen. So I have to hold myself accountable for why I'm not doing that. That's how we learn it at home and even in school. There are policies, there are rules in place to keep order, certain ways that you behave in a classroom and not, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to work, the company, the business, whatever your job is, has their own policies, has their own rules. This is what how you're expected to behave and what you're expected to do as far as behavior. And then there's a whole nother level of accountability to what your actual job is, what your performance, what you are responsible for as an employee. Everybody's got different roles. Within that is where I think it sort of might get lost a little bit, because the system is not in place properly to truly hold people accountable to what it is they're responsible for, however your culture is, right, in your job. And B, I'm not in that leadership position, so I don't know. But if I had to answer, my gut answer to this is why we're not holding people accountable is fear-based. It's a fear-driven thing on the side of the leadership, that it's the devil, Well, this is the body that we have here to get the work done. They have a hard time filling the space, finding people to if they do hold someone accountable and they have to let them go or whatever, who's going to come in now? We have to retrain. There's time and money involved in that. So I think that all comes into play with why we're not fully holding people accountable. Also, though, let's get real. This is how I really feel. You're a full-grown ass adult when you go to work. You should know what it is you're supposed to be doing and have some sort of work ethic of your own to keep yourself accountable to what you're responsible for. I don't know how much of leadership has to spend their time when they're trying to run a business and keep the bottom line, why they have to do that, right? What? Yeah. We're full-grown adults here. Like, own your shit and do what you're supposed to do. Somebody shouldn't be babysitting you and micromanaging you so that you're able to do that. This is where self-accountability comes in. And if you're not willing to be honest about why you can't and aren't doing what you're supposed to do and have a laundry list of excuses why, there's the problem. leadership is not going to spend their time doing that. So they sort of, I think, resign to it. Like, whatever. It's not the majority of people, because the rest of everybody is accountable, and that's why we're in business. But they sort of maybe turn a blind eye. Not that they don't know, but they don't spend the time and resources. Of course it starts from the top, but they have to spend time and resource in addressing that. When it comes to reviews, I don't know. I mean, I don't get reviewed. So that's the thing. It's like, that's a whole nother story. But for me, it's if something happens and you have to keep somebody accountable, you call them in right when that's happening, and you make it known. This is what it is. This is what's not acceptable. And you're on the radar now, kind of thing. But then the follow through has to happen. I don't know what happens with that. I think it's time, money, resource. Who's doing it? Who's doing it? Everybody's too busy doing everything else to run the business.
The ones that will be more successful and have that efficient run company, right? It's allocating somebody or being the person that's going to be doing it and giving them an opportunity. Look, I'm not looking to fire you. Like, we can go down that road, and we will. But the idea here is that I appreciate what you do, but I need accountability in what you do as well.
Mm-hmm. That's the key.
The way you move through it, right? So if I ask you to do something and you tell me you're going to do it, I'm going to need for you to do that piece. And maybe I need to be clearer, because sometimes if I ask somebody to do something, well, how long will that take you? Right? Do you need another person? No, you don't need another person, and it's going to take you about a half hour, and that'll be done in a half hour. Great. I'll give you, 40 minutes for any kind of obstacle that goes on in there. And it's kind of opening it and being clear and allowing it not to be a wait, but coming from the other person. And if it's, a half hour is a little too long. How can we get that done in less time? Well, then I'm going to need another person. Okay. Well, what could that other person do for you? Well, blah, blah, blah. And it's an understanding of that person that's in front of you, their process and how they work through something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm not aware. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's exactly what I kind of hinted at. There's not enough communication, I think, between management and staff. And this is something I have found in every single company I worked in. Yeah. And, the review, and it's interesting that we think of a yearly review. Most of us thought of negative things straight away. The review could be brilliant. But our mindset already says, oh, no, they're telling me this and that. I know people, they're waiting for the bad thing, even so there is none. You know what I mean? So the review could be good. But again, even if you did a brilliant job in February, what is it worth to hear about it in December? It needs to be instant. The communication needs to be there all the time.
I'm telling you, if I don't hear about something that I fucked up when it happens, I'm fully expecting a brilliant review at the end of the year, because I don't want to hear any of this shit. If I did something in February, you should have said it in February. I don't want to hear about it. It's like I'm fully expecting you to tell me how awesome I am right now if we're having this review, right? That's to me what accountability is, because it's like a child. If they do something, or even a pet, like, you don't tell them months later, I really didn't like the way you did that. You've got to deal with it when it happens. I think the point between what Brett and Gaby both just said, true accountability when it comes to work in business and in work culture, I don't think it's going to miss the mark every time if we don't start leading with positive things also first, most of the time, like acknowledging, thank you for doing this. This was amazing, blah, 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 blah. I need a little more of this from you, right? It's not going to be received if I don't hear some of the good stuff that I'm also doing. And I think it's what you said. Leadership doesn't communicate either way. So to hold somebody accountable, it's sort of like, how are you coming at me if all I'm going to receive is negative stuff? But again, let's be real. When you go to work, you sign, you're an employee. Like, there's like a contract that you're agreeing to. This is what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm here. This is also what I'm not supposed to be doing. There's a handbook that you read that you have to acknowledge every year that I've read it. Okay, so that means if I do any of these things that I'm not supposed to do, I should get ready to be held accountable for that. It's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise.
It shouldn't, and I agree with that. And I said when we spoke about the review part, I would expect for things to be addressed. I am interested, though, in the fact that we've kind of gone back to accountability being something that other people expect of us and that is punitive. Erika said, right, you're on the radar now. I mean, that's just an outright passive aggressive sort of threat, isn't it? Brett was talking about, okay, you're going to do that, but you're telling me half an hour, you're getting half an hour. In fact, I'll be generous, you can have 40 minutes. So we're right back into what we've been trained into over the years. And Erika has raised a great point, which is you're a grown-ass adult. So yesterday evening, I came up from the lock. I've got snow and mud on my shoes. I've taken my boots off at the bottom of the stairs. I've walked up and I've got to my front door. So a shared staircase. Neighbour happens to go past, doesn't stay here that frequently, but, shared stairway, etc. Makes the comment, you're well trained. Can you get X to do that? And my response was no, because I had to learn to do this through my own experience. Once you've cleaned your own carpets, or you've had to re-clean a walkway of a ship or something multiple times because of this, you learn, okay, it's easier for me to take my boots off and not tromp them up the stairs. If they haven't come to that point of understanding themselves, what can we do other than model it? I can explain that pretty much as I've just said it to you. Is it going to make any difference? Not until that point at which they take responsibility, and obviously responsibility was something that came up.
You raised a good point. I was just wondering, because we talked in the other episode about, first of all, accountabilities for ourselves. Do we have a problem with the managers and leaders and kind of with the whole culture, because it's not cultural for the managers to hold themselves accountable to their staff?
I guess it depends on there. There might be some that do that. I don't know. I'm finding this really interesting because the way Alec said, it's punitive, like you're on the radar now. In my mind, though, it makes total sense. I don't take offense to that. It's sort of like, I'm at fucking work. You are expected to behave in a certain, I work in corporate America. There's certain expectations that I don't disagree with, right? We're professionals. We are here. This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. If I wind myself up into a position where I'm getting spoken to and I'm on the radar, what else do I expect? That I think is ultimate accountability, though. I have to be willing to say, yeah, I guess I did do that. And I think that's where the problem is, that some employees are not willing to own up if they're doing something that causes management to say, we can't have that. We can't have that here.
For me, that only counts if the company has a really good communication and is really clear. Now, I had example where the person was doing for the manager what they were told to do, and then in the review, the higher up manager says, but you did that. Why did you do that? We didn't want you to. And they literally got bad review because they didn't do what the next level were hoping they would do, but nobody ever communicated that to them. So if it's the rule book and the handbook, that's one thing. But if the management hasn't learned to communicate well all the time with the staff, you know what I mean? That's the thing. And I had plenty of examples where the managers broke the old rules from the rule books, and that was okay because the higher management. that, those rules don't count for us, just for the others. So you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, double standard. No, there's no
Double
room
standard.
for that. No room for that.
Yeah.
But so in your example, right? We're talking about accountability and personal responsibility here, right? Like, so at what point in work or anywhere, it doesn't have to just be at work, do we as our own individuals seek clarification and make sure, okay, so this is what you're asking me to do, right? And document that and be personally responsible and accountable to yourself so that when that review comes, you can be like, well, this is what I was told to do. So your issue isn't with me. Take it up with them. I think there's a missed mark there that people are not grounded enough in their own ability to be responsible to be able to say that without fear of getting fired, right? Like the retaliation is I'm going to get fired, but
Which
look
brings
right here.
Brings us back to two-way communication, or however many way, with different departments and things. So if we looking in were being consulted about how to run a business, we would be saying, you need good communication. It's got to flow in all of the directions in which the staff communicate. There's no room for double standards. People can be treated as robust, reasonable adults because we're going to explain to them exactly what is expected. And our review process is not an annual thing. It's going to be almost continuous. Your staff probably shouldn't be leaving at the end of the day if you as a manager or a team lead or whatever have not addressed something that isn't right in terms when using right as coming out of the handbook kind of thing. However, most organizations are lumbering forwards under operating procedures and things that were written a decade ago, haven't been updated, don't take into account whatever stuff is going on now, and probably don't listen very well to the feedback that is coming from the staff. Hence, it has to be multiple direction communication.
I would add to that list that you need leaders that are accessible and that feel comfortable for people to speak to. And if you don't have that, you need a mediation, someone in between that can relay, your concerns or whatever to upper management.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you right now, you're not going to have that for the simple reason that one person is supposed to do an abundance of work. Get overworked, and you just can't get it all done. That's what's happening, and that's why we're in the position we are. Everybody has to get 25 different things done in as little time as possible, but then the 25 things isn't enough because you did good today, right? So now it's 27 things or 28 things. Because you did good today, we reward you with more. But if I just don't do it, and now maybe you give me 22 things, right? So now you're rewarding the less work. But it's like, stop overloading people and just understand there's got to be a spot where you and I understand what I need from you. I need this done in this amount of time. What do you think? I think that's going to be tight, right? There's an agreement. There's a conversation. And it's really important that that is there. And when you start rushing things, you're going to cut corners, and then you're lacking in your quality. And then there's your review, right? Because your quality isn't hitting point. You're missing this, you're missing that. Well, I felt like I had to get it done within X amount of window, and I did achieve that. So some things had to go to the waste side. And that's what went to the waste side, right? So, there's a part that you have to see what you're actually asking for. And when you're not actually doing the job, it looks so easy. It really does. It's like, what don't they get? Like, that should only take 15 minutes. Yeah, but look at XYZ. Like, it's a different scenario than the last one, it's hard for me to put one thing into a picture because there's so many different ways of going with it, right? It can go in Erika's field, my field, any way you go. Like, just the daily routine. Look, it snowed today. Why didn't you get here on time? Well, I gave myself an extra half hour, but the snow got ridiculous and nobody knows how to drive. There were 3 accidents and I didn't want to get in one of them. I don't know, like there's the reality of different things going on, and that's why there's an agreement, and both people have to be okay if there's a little bit more time spent or a little bit higher expectation because of the priority, but then there has to be a way of somebody saying, well, can I get another person to help me with this piece? Right?
So it's communication again, and actually being human.
Is so important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
And it's not given enough time for the communication. The communication actually goes, it's supposed to be here, and it goes there.
Yeah.
It's like, no, stay focused. Come back here. This is the topic we want to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's where it generally goes. It'll go off topic, and then, all right, so you understand what I need, but there's an off topic piece that came in that kind of dirtied it all up.
I feel like
so communication and being a human leader, that's really what it comes down to in the end of the day, isn't it? Because what I find, it's almost we're bringing school and university to our workplace, right? It's like we're still, and Erika, you hinted on it, it's almost like we all stay teenagers and the bosses are the teachers. And the teachers think the staff will just try and get away with as little work as possible, and they want to get everything out of me and won't go back. That's their mindset. While the staff thinks, the bosses are trying as much work getting out of me as possible and trying to squeeze me everywhere. And it's almost like it's a against each other scenario.
Yeah, I really feel like leadership needs a whole systemic culture change and has to become really heart-centered. I mean, you're dealing with human beings. We're not robots. We're not machines. So just like you said, heart-centered, you're a person before me. This is what I need from you. But really, I really feel like this is my ending thought here, is that as an adult in the workforce and in life in general, you know what you're supposed to be doing. Right? I know what is expected of me and what I'm supposed to be doing. And I also know when I'm not doing it, right? I have an internal compass. We all have it. Whether we choose to listen to it or not is a whole nother story. But if I'm going to listen to my internal compass, I know if I'm doing what I'm expected to be doing or not, if I'm doing the best I can or not. And at the end of the day, it's being personally responsible to myself about what I'm expected to do. And if I'm confused, I'm seeking clarity to the people that I'm answering to that are expecting this from me. So I know exactly what is expected of me so that I can do it. And by all means, stay off the goddamn radar. Like there's no, like, it's easy to do. You know what you're expected to do. Just do it. You don't need to be on the radar. And if you get yourself on the radar, take a look at why. Why am I on the radar here? Is it really my boss or is it something that I'm doing? I mean, it could be your boss. But most times, maybe I'm not doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm not saying just for work. This goes in life in general. It's not always everyone else is the reason why I'm not achieving or getting in trouble for something.
Absolutely. And for my closing thought, hopefully we would live in a world of robust, characterful adults who have all of these things about communication, accountability, responsibility nailed down. Unfortunately, we don't. We live in a world where resilience and robustness, tend to be shied away from, and actually people are kept quite immature just by the nature of some of the stuff that they feed themselves from mass media. So in order to have what we're saying would be better for the world, we need a complete paradigm shift. And I don't know how we get people back, because I think we were there decades ago to being robust, mature adults. I think that might be a topic of another conversation.
I think so, because I don't think there's enough consequences. That's what's happening. There's no consequences to, if you're not you're not being held accountable, so there's no consequences. So people can just do whatever. So there's no incentive to actually show up in a different way at work. But I will say, as far as leadership goes, aside from just being heart-centered and communication, you got to stop holding everybody accountable for one person's actions. That's never going to work, right? You have a whole staff of people and we're not all doing what that person's doing. So don't talk to me. Don't talk to me about what they're doing. Talk to me about what I'm doing, because I'm responsible for myself. That's my closing thought. I hope I have a job on Monday, but that's my closing thought.
Yeah, because one of your people does actually listen, and that we are actually admitting. I want to everybody know this is the episode where we're admitting we've got more than one listener. And Brett, closing thought.
Closing thoughts. I think it comes back of your own accountability and doing the best job you can, and knowing and enjoying what you do. And if you're not enjoying it and you're just there for a paycheck, you might want to search for another job. I mean, maybe there's not one out there at that time, but there's still a level of working. I'll say for myself, I think I am too meticulous, and I don't know if the level is that high that they look for. So it might take me a little longer when I look at what I do. And guys like, that takes too long. I'm like, yeah, but where did it go wrong? So I might be too meticulous. They might want a lower level of quality. And I don't like compromising quality. If somebody wanted to get rid of me for quality, I would kind of think like, it's kind of silly. But I would understand that I would move on to somebody who appreciates it. Yeah. So just find where it works for you.
Cool. Gaby, did you give us a closing thought?
I can't remember.
No.
But
Maybe the listeners can write in.
but the point really is, I think for me, open the communication. Have a conversation. You can talk to your bosses. They're human beings. Sometimes it seems the staff forgets that they're human beings too, right? And they're under pressure and they have worries and you don't know what's going on. So if you're confused, if you're not clear, just open up the conversation.
Yeah.
I never seen a boss say, I don't want to talk to you. If you go to a boss and say, I'm really confused here now. Can you just clarify for me, blah, blah, blah. They do. They're actually happy for a conversation, clarifying things. So, yeah. Take responsibility and have the conversation. Full stop.
Look, we've been telling you the same stuff, people, for the last 82 episodes. If you're not learning by now, okay. Everyone, we may have some of you back to listen in the 83rd episode. Who knows? Perhaps today was the first time that you picked us up. Speak to you again soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye.